Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murachs, HTML5, and CSS3 3rd edition for the AWD Application Web Development 1000 Web Technologies class. And I'm up to Chapter 10 of 18, which is on working with tables. We have 4 applied objectives and 4 knowledge objectives. Our applied objectives: use HTML to create tables with merged cells, captions, headers, and footers. Use CSS and CSS3 structural pseudo-classes to format tables. Use the HTML figure and fig caption elements to treat a table as though it was a figure. Use HTML to provide table accessibility. Describe rows, columns, cells, header cells, data cells, table header, table footer, and table body. Describe the proper use of tables, now that CSS should be used for table layout. Describe how to do table nesting and table wrapping. And finally, describe how to use table attributes for accessibility. Now here's a table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own table just so that you can see what it looks like. I don't think I have that page that I had up here previously, so let's see if I do. Have it in here. Do I still have my index file? And of course it doesn't look like it. So let's just create a brand new one. That's not a problem. Alright, this first example I'm going to put absolutely no CSS in. Alright, so doc type HTML. This is just going to be very bare bones like. What else will we have? We'll have a title here that just says table example. Make this bigger so you can all read it okay. Boy, my heat, I didn't think it was that cold outside, but my heat just keeps getting ready to go on and on and on and on. So I will be pausing this very quickly, and while I pause it, I'll probably go and create the table while I do this. And I'm just going to make all the members of my family in here. So in fact, that has to be in a row. Live error. We'll go back and we'll discuss all of these after I get the table finished. Right. And I've got 5 people in my family, so I'll tell you what, let's add just a little bit of spacing. I've got to stop. Alright, so once again I'm going through here and I'm trying to create a table. Let me just mention a few things before I go. I haven't even saved this yet. Tables go between table tags, so notice there's table there, and there's the ending table tag here. Tables can hold a lot of different things, but most everything they hold is inside of a table row. Alright, so first we have table headers, and by default these should be centered. And then we've got table data, and by default this is almost always going to be left justified. Alright, so tables contain table tags. Underneath that you've got TR tags for table row. The table row tags, TR, contain either TH for table header or TD for table data. So if I save this, and we'll just save it as our old familiar index.html. Looks like I already did have, I didn't think I did have an index there, but let's try just saving it then as an index2.html. It says we already have one of those. Let's see, no. How about an index 3? There we go. So if we go to run this, let's make it bigger. There it is. Now, it may not look like a standard table because there are no special grids or anything around it. So if I do come in there and do this, so if I come in there and just say table border equal 1, which means put a 1 cell border around it, and we run it again and refresh, there you go. Again, you can see how all of the table data is left justified, and hopefully you can notice, all right, the table headers are center justified. So just keep that in mind as we start. I just wanted to build a very simple little table as we started. Not the same one they show in the book there, but just so you got to actually see it in action, so to speak. So I've already mentioned to you that a table consists of rows and columns, and the intersection of a row and column like this is called a cell. So these are the rows, they go horizontally. These are the columns, they go vertically. Cells that contain the data are called data cells. The ones with headers are called header cells. The header for a table can consist of more than one row. You can also have a footer for a table, and we'll look at that probably in a little bit. And this basically, so these would be your headers here. The stuff in white would be your body, and here that would be your footer. They've used CSS here where I have used no CSS on mine. All right. So again, notice they use class equal left. And what that did was, I believe, it put this here and it moved that way over to here. So here's the same table with absolutely no formatting. All right, there's other elements that you can also put into a table. You can put a T head, you can put a T body, and you can put a T foot. Those elements can make it easier to style a table with CSS. All right. You can code the T head, T body, and T foot in any sequence. That's different. It used to be that the T body had to be last. You did the T head, then the T foot, then the T body, but that has changed. Doesn't matter which, the header will always be displayed first and the footer last. So you can see here we've got this whole thing surrounded by a T head, a T body, and a T foot. I can do the same. Now, this will not look any different, at least to my knowledge. So you see, or you saw what my table looked like. All right. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to take, and here, this will have now a T head beginning and ending. After, oops. And after that, we will have the T body. There's the beginning. And here's the ending. Now, I don't have a footer on mine right now, so I will just put empty tags. In fact, let's put an ampersand NBSP, a non-breaking space. All right, so we've done this, we've saved it. Let's go back to our page and let's refresh and see if it looks any different. It moved it down a little bit, but the actual table information still looks the same. All right, let's talk about some basic skills for formatting tables. This was the last chapter. Get rid of that. All right. So the example they show here is pretty much what I just did. All right, in other words, I added the T head around my TH tags. I put T-body tags around everything that had a TD in it for table data, and I didn't have a footer. Okay. So some of the properties that you're most often going to use with tables, with the table row, the table header, and the table data elements include border collapse. And when you've got a border collapse, I think, did they show the picture? Okay, here's the table, and then there's the table without collapsed borders. With collapsed borders, without. So you can see how the borders look here as opposed to here. So what border collapse does is it's a keyword that determines whether space exists between the borders. That space, whether it's collapsed to a single border between cells. You can use collapse and separate. Separate is the default. So that's separate and that's collapse. Border spacing is a relative or absolute value you can use to specify the space between cells when the borders are not collapsed. Padding is the space between the cell contents and the outer edge of the cell. Text align is the alignment of text, and vertical align is the vertical alignment of text. So they've got some CSS here that displays those, and again, you can see what happens with this. You'll notice that the table has got a border, 1 pixel solid black. You're telling it to be collapsed. All right, the table header and table data have a border around them with padding. Text aligned to the right. Okay. Table header left and table data left, say to a text align left. T-head and T-foot should have a background color of aqua, and T-foot should be bolded. You can see all the different stuff associated with that. So in HTML, there used to be a lot of commonly used attributes for formatting tables, but most of them have been deprecated. Even the one I used with the border pretty much has been deprecated, but I tend to use that even though it has been deprecated. Don't know if I've really mentioned deprecated. Deprecated means it's been marked for extinction. Now, no one knows when it'll become extinct or if ever it'll become extinct, but that's literally is what it means. All right. What you see on the screen now are some of the pseudo-class selectors that you can use with tables. The nth child that you see right there is the nth child of a parent. The nth last child is the same thing, but it counts backwards, whereas nth child counts forward. The nth of type, all right, it's of that particular type within the parent, and the last of type is the same thing, but again, counting backwards. So, typical values you use for these. Odd for every odd element, even for every even element, n for the nth child, so if you want to count one, 2n, which is the same as even, 3n, which is every third, 2n plus 1, which is the same as odd, and 3n plus 1, which is every third child. Now, most people find this to be very confusing. I want to grab a line that they actually have in here, this line right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and copy it in myself. T-body, tr, nth child, even, background, color, color, you could have just said color too, silver. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to actually break a rule right here. And what I mean is, I don't feel like creating some CSS right now. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to put that up in my head section in style tags. This is not considered to be good practice. It will work, but there are better ways of doing it. All right, so I was saying that my T-body, Okay, let's see if it looks any different. And we'll come back and we'll save it. I'm sorry, we'll come back and we'll talk about it in a little bit of depth and breadth of coverage. So there it is. Surprised me. I thought for sure it would have changed, but might be because I put a blank space in there. Let's just check. And it was. Now, sometimes when people look at this, okay, because what did I put in there? I put even. And you're like, 1, 2, 3. How can that be even? The first one is always 0, regardless of what's in there. So that's 0, 1, and 2. Also, I told it to just do that inside of the body. So if I didn't have those tags in there, this heading right here would also be in silver. So these CSS structural pseudo classes let you format a table without using classes and IDs. There are still other ways that you can do it, and you can use IDs, etc., if you are so inclined. There's their table in a browser. All right, now they put the table in a figure here. So in other words, what they've done, sorry. All right, next they talk about a table that you put within figure tags. Okay, so I have done that, and I'll show you in a minute. And I also added the CSS to see how it's going to look when I get done. So what I have done is, here's the same CSS that was in the book. Okay, I'm not going to go over any of this stuff, or at least right now. I put everything that was in the table inside of figure tags. At the top, I put a fig caption. I put my own caption in there, and that's the beginning and ending, and then there's just the table. So I'm going to save this. I have not looked at it yet. So let's refresh. And you can see how different it looks. I don't have the coloring, etc. in anymore, but the figure element can be used as a container for anything used as a figure, including a table. By default, the fig caption element is an inline element. Although you can use a caption element to provide a caption for the table, it's better to use the fig caption. All right, this is considered, what is here is more the HTML5 way of doing things. All right, the next thing that's discussed in here, and I'm just going to keep going on. All right, so the next thing that's discussed in here, because I'm going to have to make a change in here in just a moment, is talking about col span and row span. Oops, darn it. Okay. And here's an example right here of col span. Notice how this, well, I shouldn't say that this is. See how sales takes up 4 different columns? All right. And they show an example of it here. And I don't know if they have any row, but I'll do a similar type of thing. Okay, so I'm going to say the col span. So what I will do is I will come in here, and I've got here members of the Scott family, but I'm going to change that. What I'm going to do is at the top here, I'm going to keep my TR tag, my TH, but I'm going to say here col span equal to, and instead of first name and last name, I'm going to say complete name. And then I will get rid of this last name right here. And again, this to me is the best way to learn this. So notice, there we go. You can see how this one row right now, or this one row is over 2 columns. Now, does that look better? Draw your own conclusion. I mean, it can depend on a lot of different things, and a lot of times it really and truly is just personal choice. I liked it better the way that it was. So I'm going to go back and change it so it goes back and it looks like this. I like the way that looks better. You may or may not agree, and I'm not right, you're not right. So, because it's, again, all a matter of personal preference. All right. There are attributes, as it says here, that can be used for accessibility, such as caption, headers, and scope. You should use these to make a table more accessible to visually impaired people. Those are the ones who are going to use screen readers. So the caption tag describes the contents of the table. The other alternative is to treat the table as a figure. So in other words, if I wanted to get rid of what we had in here, so I'm not going to do a lot of formatting on this, but I'm going to grab this figure that we put in here, this right here, and I'm going to comment this out. All right, and I'm going to get rid of this also. So all of this is going to be commented out. All right, then at the very top up here, I'm just going to put in a caption. This is the older school way of doing it. This is the way I was taught to do it. So I'm going to grab that same members of the Scott family that we had earlier, and I will put that in here. But at the bottom, I also want to comment out this figure, the ending figure tag, because right now it doesn't make any sense to have that in there. So I'm going to save, go back, refresh. All right, looks a little bit different, but the members of the Scott family are still right there. Now, it moved a lot because I don't have the figure tag in there anymore, and some of the stuff, the CSS that was in the figure tag right now isn't being applied. So this stuff here, margin 0, etc., width and padding, that's why it looks so different. Okay? You also have a headers tag that identifies one or more header cells. And you've got a scope tag that tells the user if a cell is associated with a row or a column. Now, again, this stuff is virtually always used for people who are vision impaired and use a screen reader to try to explain to them the makeup of the table in this case. All right. Now, what's shown next is the nesting of tables. And that's a table within a table. So as it says, a table within another table is nested within one of its cells. You can nest one table within another table by coding a table element within an ID element. Okay? It used to be that these were used a lot. In fact, tables used to be used for everything because they automatically centered and people got lazy and they used tables for everything. I know people who are web developers that on their template that they use to create sites, they put everything on the site within a table. And then inside of there, they had other tables. All right, so in the past, tables were used for laying out pages. So then it was common to nest tables. Today, typically, you're not going to do it. It's not that you can't. It's just typically, all right, you're not going to. So you shouldn't need to nest tables for two reasons. First, you can get the same result in other ways, typically using CSS. And second, it's better to keep your tables simple so people can understand them. Tables should only be used for what is referred to as tabular data. All right? And then the last thing that's in here talks about wrapping. By default, the content of cells in a table will wrap to 2 or more lines. If you size the browser window so the contents can't be displayed on a single line. So in other words, you're not going to really see this on mine, at least not too much. Okay, but the idea is if we bring this up and we start making this smaller, you see how the heading went to 2 lines when I went to a certain size, how it dropped down? All right. But in some cases, you don't want the headings in the data to wrap. Okay, if that's the case, you can force that by using a value of no wrap. So I'm going to try that. I do very little with this, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I'm going to come up here where we've got all of our table stuff, and right here I'm going to add to my table stuff white space, colon, no wrap. Okay, just that one line is all I've added right here. Now I'm going to go back to my table. I'm going to refresh, and now I'm going to see what happens when I keep knocking it down. You see how now it doesn't go down to 2 lines anymore, so it keeps my content from wrapping. So you can use the white space property to keep a table from wrapping if it doesn't fit in the browser window. Okay, you can code it for an entire table or just for individual cells. That's pretty much it, okay, for this chapter. So I'll be back in a little bit, and in the next chapter we will talk about something that's actually really, really important and with a lot of changes in HTML5, and that is, I wish I wouldn't have closed that, and that is the concept of creating forms. All right, so when I come back in just a bit, I will be going over Chapter 11, which starts in your book on page 371, and we will be talking about forms. Okay, I'll see you then.